We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Through the unknown remembered gate, when the last of earth left.
All right, we're back with another episode of Suburban Tongue. I'm here today with Mike Messina. He's the owner of Chameleon Bookstore in downtown Johnstown, and I'm really excited to get him on the podcast because whenever I first got the idea for the show, he was one of the first people that came to my mind. So I'm very happy that we could finally get him on here. So I'm going to start with kind of the simple questions, and then we can work up from there. So what led you to start this bookstore?
Well, Caleb, it wasn't my decision. Back in the 90s, there was a cool night spot called Espresso Cafe. It was a coffee house, 416 Main Street in downtown Johnstown. And it was a cool place to hang out, especially like on the weekends. Friday, Saturday night, folks would bring their guitars and instruments in and jam. And so we'd go there and relax, and our friends would come. And my wife played guitar and sang, so she loved that scene. The owner was Fred Rada, and he closed down about 1996 and moved out of state. He was a high school buddy of mine. And Lorraine said, we have to open a store. We have to have a night spot. It took about 4 years, 4 years, but we found a place. I preferred a bookstore. She wanted a coffee house night spot, kind of like the Espresso Cafe had been. There's nothing like that in downtown Johnstown. So we found this site. I went in kicking and screaming. I was a full-time social worker. But she really felt that you have to create it so that more will come. And it took a while, but that's what happened. It was a bookstore during the day, and at night we would jam and we'd have open mics and poetry readings. And we named it Chameleon because we were arguing about what the venue was going to be about. Should it be a bookstore? Should it be, a night spot? And she said, like a chameleon, we'll adjust. And that's how the Chameleon came about.
That's really cool. So we've talked about this, before kind of off podcast, but what is it about this area that really excites you? And how has that view of the area changed since, even from when you were a kid to now?
Good question. When I was a kid, this whole valley was booming. At night, the sky would be orange from the mills. And you would come downtown on Saturdays, and your friends would be here, people would be shopping. It was a wonderful time. Big department stores, places to go, all kind of eateries. It was a bustling place. And after that all closed down by the 80s, it was dead. It's been dead. But what I'm seeing happening is the combination of local entrepreneurs who are opening small businesses, especially eateries and things, and galleries. I'm seeing talented people that we're importing from other areas. Basically, if you put the keywords on Google, looking for a place with a sense of history, nature, and low cost of living, Johnstown pops up. That's what people are telling me. So we're getting people from places like California, from the South, from everywhere. And what I'm seeing is, if you look around the square here, quite a number in the last 5 years. Yeah, 5 years. It's really booming. Artists of all kinds, talented people, all ages are coming in. So I'm seeing a migration to Johnstown. It's a slow, what I call developing a critical mass towards just a better future for all of us, I think.
Yeah. I like that term, the developing a critical mass for the town. And I feel like something that I've noticed, and it's kind of just axiomatic for the place that people grow up in, is the town, kind of the city that someone grows up in, is developing that person into who they need to be, and it's gonna provide what needs provided for that person to grow into who they want to be. And we've talked about before, kind of the idea that somebody can reinvent themselves as many times in life as they want. I mean, that's the name of the bookstore, Chameleon. You can be one person, and then whenever you decide maybe this isn't for me anymore, you can just fully change. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about our time that we've been put in is that, with the internet, with technology, you can have so many different feet and so many different doors, and you can pursue each one as much as you want or as little as you want. So I think kind of the question here is that I've wondered is what kind of reinventions have you done for yourself through time? Like, you've talked about being a social worker, and then you became a bookstore owner. Like, could you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. I wanted to travel. When I came of age, I did that. I studied overseas, I lived overseas, I worked overseas. I lived in England. I traveled to the Middle East several times, all over Europe. And I've lived in cities. I've lived in big areas. But something just drew me back. And this was as I was about 30 years old. I was approaching 30. I'd never settled on a full career at that point, other than social work. My master's was in international studies. I really thought I was going to have an international career. But when I came home, I remember I was in my late 20s, and I got involved in my downtown. It was so nice to be back in the mountains. I missed them. I'd lived in like flatlands. I lived in urban areas, but this small town just drew me back. And my career was working with kids, so that was sort of a reinvention from what I originally had intended. And drug prevention. I went to all the schools. I loved it. The energy was great. I don't regret that at all. I had a lot of good times. Met a lot of people. Just a wonderful time. But opening the bookstore when I was in my early 40s was another, like something I hadn't planned, as I mentioned earlier. And it was another challenge. But it also created an outlet for me that, was very different. I met all kinds of talented artists, musicians, people like that through the bookstore, a whole different walk of life. And basically, in the last 5 years, with Lorraine passing and then COVID hitting, I've had to and my retirement at the same time, to run the store. It's like I'm living a totally different life. A lot of new people in my life, a lot of new situations. The town is coming back alive in the last 5 years, and the store is coming back alive. Plus, starting the crawl, the downtown Johnstown Culture Crawl in 2021, and the Art House Film Club also a couple of years later. I'm getting involved in the arts myself and enjoying it. So it's been an interesting life. I feel like now that I'm in my late 60s that it's like another chance to, as you say, reinvent myself as my life winds down, and hopefully inspire other people to do the same. You can still carry on. You just have to find your passion and go with it, and that's what I'm doing.
Well, that actually segues into a kind of a question I had for later, but I think it's good to bring up now because it'll lead us into a few more things. And so, talking about art specifically, how do you define art in your life?
Art is in the eye of the beholder. You really don't put limitations on it. When I'm not an artist myself, but I appreciate it, and I know a lot of artists of all different types. I have my interests, but I think that the thing about art is the key is creativity. And again, it's amazing to talk to artists. I always ask them, what inspired you to do this? Not how long did it take you or how did you do it, but what inspired you? What was your inspiration? Sometimes they had a muse. Sometimes they had an epiphany, a dream, or just imagination. There's so many talented people out there, and art takes many forms. So it's hard to define. It really is, as I said, in the eye of the beholder. But you sort of know it when you see it. I've attended a lot of art openings. I've attended a lot of concerts, and it's all art to me. Any form, theater, it doesn't matter. I'm a fan. I'm a big fan of all art forms, and basically with the books here, always seen myself as the middleman. I'm the provider of this wisdom, and that's what I want to do.
I mean, and that's kind of an art in its own way.
It is.
Yeah.
It's the middle person. That's why I have so many genres, because you never know what someone's going to want. I had an old Arabic book from college that I brought in one day. I don't know why. The next day, a woman comes in and said, "Do you have an Arabic book?" I pulled it off the shelf. She looked at it. "This is perfect, just what I'm looking for." That's how it is.
Yeah.
I don't know about the serendipity of it, but that's happened so many times here, that the book that they want just happens to be here.
Yeah.
And to me, it's magic.
That's actually it's an idea I've really been kind of thinking about a lot lately, especially in some of my writing that I've been doing, and just thinking on stuff that's been happening in my life. I feel like one of the key realizations that any artist, anyone who wants to call themselves an artist, needs to have in their life at some point is that they're not the ones who are creating the work. They're the ones, kind of like you said, where you're the vessel, or you're the middleman for the information being given to people, and that art being spread with people. Where the artist isn't the person necessarily creating the art. They're the person who's been given this kind of field of experience, this field of memories and emotions that outside of themselves. That's the muse, where it comes in, and at the right moment is when it will kind of materialize into what it needs to be. And I don't know, I feel like it's a little comforting in a way whenever you are able to look at it in that way, because I think one of my biggest struggles with my own work and my own art has been like, when is it going to happen? Like, when am I going to finish this thing, or when is the good idea going to come around? And it's like you said, it's the serendipity of it. It's the moment where where you aren't expecting it, or where you're just doing something silly, you're just writing, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's coming. It's gonna, like, time to write this down.
Let me give you an example of that.
Yeah.
Last week, I was sweeping outside, just with a sweeper. I was wearing the same white shirt. And a woman I know, Sarah Gale, who moved here from a boat off the coast of Oregon with her husband, she's an artist. And her husband's a woodworker and potter. Wonderful people. Like I said about people moving in. Anyway, she said, "Don't move." And she snapped my picture.
Yeah.
Then later I noticed her looking over at the store and painting. She had a easel. These women come in on Saturdays and they paint things. And later she came to me, and there's a picture of me holding a broom with Chameleon, the store.
Yeah.
She painted that. And she had me hold the picture and took another picture of me and posted it. And it's overhanging now at Gallery on Gazebo. I'm going to buy that from her. But anyway, just me out sweeping in front of my storefront was the inspiration for her to paint that picture. That's how it happens.
And that's something that's going to last forever now.
It's funny, huh? It really is. I was just doing my thing. But that's what I love about creativity. It can be anywhere, anytime, anything can be artistic.
Yeah.
But it is amazing the talent level that we are bringing in to this area of all kinds. It's really incredible.
And not even just bringing in, just uncovering it.
Yeah. The local people. Yeah. We have a woman who does fashion shows here. We have dance studios. We have a symphony orchestra. We have, the Greed Band I listened to a few weeks ago. They're incredible. There's so many untapped resources here. Film, everything. So I can wait to see what this area is going to be like in 10 or 15 years, if it continues like it is, and especially with your generation coming up and doing so many interesting things.
Yeah. That is something that interests me as well, and I'm glad that was kind of one of my, like I was talking about earlier, where every artist has their watershed moment. I think that was kind of my big one, was realizing that the place that I'm at, the place that I come from, that I hail from, that was the place I was put at purposefully. I was put here purposefully. I was put, born in 2005 purposely. Those were done for a reason, and I might right now be able to say some sort of reason. I think it might be, but I think that the beauty of it is that you never really know the reason why, but as long as you're willing to, people always just say, as long as you're willing to put in the work for it, but it's really true. As long as you're willing to just put in the time to let it happen, that's whenever it happens.
Yeah.
You were talking about, creativity being, it's around, it's around everywhere, and that's how I feel like it is. I feel like it's under every book, under every table, you know.
Let me give you another example.
Yeah.
I gotta jump in here. I'll tell you why. When I became a social worker, I had always been shy.
Yeah.
But I had to speak in front of all kind of groups, auditoriums full of people. I ran classes. I did all kinds of things. What I did was, believe it or not, I studied the old vaudeville performers. I gathered props. I would walk into a room, and I had a drug ID kit. I had intoxication goggles. I had all kinds of things. And I think I became pretty dang successful in working a room. I can tell you that. And I'm proud of that. That was my passion.
Yeah.
I wanted to convince these kids. I would say, don't let anyone ever tell you that drugs can't hurt you, because I'm telling you here today. And there's 3 doors they're going to open for you if you take them. You know, the first door closest behind you, you make it out again, and that's prison. Or it could be a revolving door in and out of drug treatment centers. Or could it be like Lenny Bias, #1 draft choice for the Boston Celtics, who after he got $1 million contract, tried cocaine one time and died of a heart attack at age 20. That's why you never know. It's a Russian roulette. And I would do those kind of things, and I loved it. And that was my creativity. When you're talking about what is your forte, and it became it. And I think that those 30 years I put in that field, now that I look at it, it was kind of an art form. Because really, I couldn't, I had to walk the talk too. No one's ever going to see me drinking a beer, walking down the street or in a bar when I did that. And I felt like that was a very important thing, being around those kids in that time of my life. And now I'm living a completely different life, but during that time period, that was my reality. Now I've sort of reinvented myself. And I think, like you said, that during your life you're going to have a number of times when you're going to be doing that. But I never thought of that as an art form, but now I do. You know, teachers are very influential.
The most influential.
Yeah, no doubt of it.
Yeah,
Coaches, teachers.
Because when you have a good teacher, I mean,
pastors.
I mean, it's the same if it's not, you know, if it's a subpar teacher, but you know, the best teachers are the ones who the things they taught you, even if it's not like the facts they taught you, but the lessons they taught you are what sticks with you forever.
Yes.
And a good teacher will stick around forever. Like, you can just text them and you know, email them and be like, hey, you know, what are your thoughts on this? And if they really are the person who, you know, makes a good teacher, they're gonna, you know, try to reconnect with you.
Oh, no doubt about it.
Those are the best teachers I've had in my life.
Yeah, it's nice. It really is. And you never know who you've influenced. Trust me, you never know how you've influenced people. Yeah. Sometimes years later. It's really incredible. Before I went into that drug job, I had worked as a big brother with teenage boys, and that was my learning period too. I really enjoyed that, but it was also challenging. But anyway, the point is that whatever you decide to do with your life, you better believe in it and have passion and feel like you're making a difference. I don't care if it's a janitor job. You know, you need to do that's actually from Dr. Martin Luther King. Yeah, he said, you be the best one you can be of whatever you decide to do.
And I mean, that kind of, it prevails in a lot of, you know, thought, a lot of philosophies, a lot of religions like that. I mean, you know, the Bible would do whatever is given to you and do it wholly unto the Lord. You know, do it for, and you're doing it for the greater purpose. And that's where people, you know, will fall. And it's like, you know, they can be doing something that has the potential of being world-shatteringly like, you know, could be that important, but they do it for themselves. Yeah,
that's the problem. You have to look, you know, the butterfly effect too. You know, every little bit you never know where it's going to end up. Be an example for other people if you can. You know, that's the whole thing. And pull them up if you can. The point about the store, though, is that I just feel like I'm sort of a sort of an asset. Like, there's so much wisdom here, and it's available to people, and it's almost like a repository of that kind of intelligence. And by being here, I just feel like blessed. I feel like this is so cool. It's like the best place to be. Where else would I be but doing what I'm doing? So
now, I have a bit of a lighter question after all that, and it's good, talking back about the bookstore. So if you wouldn't have ever opened the bookstore, you would have stayed with the social work job, or you would have moved on to something else.
That's right.
Do you see yourself more as a book collector or a book reader?
Boy, that's a tough question. I'm certainly a collector, big time. You should see my house. But I love to read too.
Yeah.
Both? Can I say both?
You can say
It's hard to quantify one from the other. If I could get my hands on a good book, I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can read a good book, I'll do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm both. I mean, I enjoy. My reading comes and goes. I like reading in the morning and evening most days, but collecting's always in the back of my mind too. Yeah, true. But I like to think about, as you pointed, I didn't want to open the store.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been the biggest blessing to my life now that I'm retired.
Yeah.
And if she hadn't forced me to open it, my late wife, Lorraine Beasy, I would not be doing this today probably. I don't know if I would have had the nerve to open my own store if she hadn't forced it. But now it's like the best thing that ever happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
So you see how it works? Sometimes you have to listen to people.
Yeah.
They know what's best for you.
Yeah, the people who know you the best are the ones who
That's
are gonna
right.
lead your life in the way that you couldn't even.
Oh, I couldn't even imagine that I'd be doing this now. I didn't think it would last, but it certainly has. So it's all good.
Yeah, and I mean things that whether it's art or whether it's business or whatever, it's things that have that need to have the most impact on people that somehow stay afloat. Through whatever hardship they might go through. I mean, because this town, even though it's coming back now, I mean for a while there wasn't very much happening at all, and yet the businesses that stayed open.
That's right.
And,
that's right. You think of George's Song Shop and some of the other places, but when we opened, it was all dark out there.
mm-hmm.
There was nothing around the park. It was awful. But if you stay there, it will come. It took a little longer than I thought, but it is happening as we speak.
Yeah.
That critical mass is happening. And it's pleasure. It's a pleasure to be a part of it. I see these other businesses on this side of the street, and it's just, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It really is.
And it must be nice, I mean, because it's like you've been here probably the longest out of some of them. I mean, because like there's a lot.
There's no doubt of it.
Yeah, there's a
25
lot of
years,
new business. Yeah, so I mean, just being around even 10 years would put you ahead of most of them by at least half a decade.
That's right.
And so like you've kind of like been here, fighting the good fight, keeping it going until
Exactly. I love that term, by the way.
Yeah.
I think of it myself, fighting the good fight.
Yeah.
That's what we thought. We are hopefully going to inspire others, and I'm thrilled too that other bookstores are opening, like Classic Elements, and Inclined to Read at the Library, and now Sam Lotson's up at the Galleria. I want this to be a book destination. I'm not competitive.
On the podcast here too.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I'm not competitive at all. I want other places to open. People who like books will come here.
Yeah.
Why not?
And you go to different places too. I mean,
I do.
Yeah.
I've been to all those places.
Because one place doesn't have what you need, you go to the next place.
I've done it. I found a really cool book up at Sam Lawson's, an old religious book from the 1800s.
Yeah.
That the pastor had written this beautiful thing, and the illustrations are amazing
cool.
for $4. Yeah.
Yeah, his store is like that's so crazy for me to
It's
say.
got a hodgepodge of everything.
Like it's just everything. Every hardback is the same price. Every
it's
paperback
nuts.
is the same price. It's crazy. And
It really is.
The best stuff.
It's funny. But the other thing though I want to push a little bit is the Culture Crawl. And I'll tell you how that came about. My wife and I went to the Pittsburgh Art Crawl in 2016. And we went from place to place that evening, and it was wonderful. It was so cool. And all these different venues were open that night. And we said, well, if we ever get enough venues in Johnstown, we'll do the same thing.
Yeah.
And back then, there was nothing going on. A few years later, Gallery came in, and then Classic Elements opened, and the library was there, and then Art House 6 opened. And we started thinking, wow, let me go around. I went to 9 different places. George's Song Shop didn't want to stay open, unfortunately, but and wasn't part of it. But 8 of us, the first crawl, and we had a lot of fun. I had the Poetry Slam on my street, and then that was 2021. 2022, 13 places. Last year, 23. So far this year, we got 25, and it's going to be September 28th. I'm going to have the street closed off. I got my Poetry Slam, Free Speech, Banned Book Week. It's all tied together out there. There's going to be all kind of things going on all around here. So, and we're going to have maps printed out where you can just follow whatever route you want for all those 25 places.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, like I said before we started the podcast, I mean, the Culture Crawl last year was what made me even think about doing this podcast, because I remember I was walking around with my girlfriend, and I think it was after we were all done, like we got into the car, and I was like, I think I should do a podcast, and I should just, like, you know, it's like keep the Culture Crawl going, you know, between years, whenever that's kind of like how I see what I'm doing here. And I mean, I that's why I was incredibly happy to get to have the chance of talking to people in Pittsburgh, because it's like, you know, that's starting to branch out. And I mean, I would hope that, you know, just through the internet being such a kind of a wide ranging blanket over everybody, that like I would be able to talk to people from anywhere, really. I mean, because in the promotional video for this podcast that will be coming out at some point today, that's something I say where it's like, I just, you know, I want to talk to somebody who has an interesting story to tell. And I think so many more people have interesting stories to tell than even they know. And it's like, and I mean, that's kind of an art form in itself, is asking the right questions to get the right answers out of people.
You know who you remind me of? In summer of 2019, a really weird thing happened. This is a story in itself. There's a huge storm, and my fire alarm went off. That had never happened before. And 3 young guys came in, kind of like you, and they started asking me questions. They asked me all about the store, they asked me about my life, and we talked for about 2 hours. And they started taking pictures of me. I said, "Who are you guys? No one's ever talked to me like this before." They were 3 university students from Tufts at a university in Boston. And they were writing a book through a class they were doing. And I was the second person they met in Johnstown. And they thought it was the coolest store. And I remember they stayed a month, and they were featured in the Tribune Democrat. I took them to Voma and other places. They're just really nice guys. And what you're doing that was a real creative project too. I was going to be the second chapter in the book. But it was just, that's what the coolest thing is, that you can take, you know, a podcast, or you can take someone's life history. There was a guy called Studs Terkel who did this. He was an oral historian, and he would go to, like, he did a book on World War II. All he did was talk to veterans about their experiences. And he talked about people who had lived during the Depression and talked about their experiences. And he made a living at that, writing books about real life people and what their lives were like. And that's what these guys were doing.
And I mean, I think that's what people really want to hear. I mean, that's why I love podcasts, that, you know, the ones that I listen to, where it's like, it's not, even if they have like pre-planned questions, it's not scripted. It's not edited. It's not funneled through some sort of, you know, bias. At least the good ones aren't.
No.
And I think that's what people really appreciate about it, is it's kind of like we were talking about with reinventing yourself. It's kind of like society as a whole is reinventing itself.
It is.
Because it's basically just what, you know, Socrates and Plato and the philosophers were doing back in ancient Greece. They were just talking to each other. And I mean, sadly, most of that stuff never got recorded. There's so much stuff that we never know. I mean, they wrote down what they wrote, but I mean, even that, it's not their voice, so you don't even know that, you don't know what they were saying. And so, I mean, I think that's why I personally feel so strongly of, like, just wanting to talk to as many people as I can by the end of the podcast, is because, you know, if you don't, nobody will.
Yeah. The one other point I wanted to make is that I'm a glasses half full guy. You have to be an optimist. You have to believe what you're doing is important and it matters. And you have to have good people in your life. You know, when I lost an amazing person in my life, for 40 years I knew her, Lorraine, 40 years and 2 weeks exactly. I was devastated. But then, you know, a few years later, someone else came into my life who's been amazing, Kathy. And she's been a huge supporter of this store, of the Crawl. She's doing almost all the work on it this year, and also the Art House Film Club that we run. And I can tell you this, it makes a huge difference to have people who share your goals, share your dreams, who encourage you, and that's so important, having faith. You know, very important.
And they allow you to continue to reinvent yourself. I mean, because you know, you get to a certain age, no matter how well you take care of yourself, that just at a certain time it's just hard to keep doing new things.
I'm saying, it's like an old dog has to learn new tricks, and it's not easy sometimes.
And he can't learn them by himself. He has to have somebody with him.
Yeah, believe me, I was not part of the technology age. It came after I was been around a while. So, but absolutely. But I think It's really been an interesting life. I think I've learned to adapt and be a little more flexible, and I just see so much potential, so much potential. But again, it's the younger people like you that we're counting on to take the next steps and to move it on forward. And to give you an example, Kaylee over at the Geller and Gazebo, she's doing a lot of marketing and do good things. They're coming up with all kind of like art shows, just cool stuff.
Yeah.
Younger people are stepping up. Cassidy over at the Art House Film Club in Troy at the State Theater, they're doing a great job there. They're both 25 years old.
Yeah.
So it's just awesome to see young people in the area like you doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that's really inspiring. I think though, as we kind of start coming to around the end of our podcast,
Good.
I asked this question in some variant or another to every person, and I think as I've asked it more and more, I've realized that it's kind of become like it's summarizing kind of all the ideas that we've gone through, because I think that we hit on a lot of things that we talk about, and I also end up shooting myself in the foot with it, because the person gives such an answer that floors me, and then I'm like, well, I have to end it now, and I don't even know how to. But so what I always like to ask, and because it's a strong belief that I hold, and one of the even one of the reasons why I wanted to start this podcast is kind of just to get people's opinions on this. But I think, and we've talked about this a little bit, I think that your creative output in life, what you put off into the world, like we said, will change you if you let it change you. If you don't let it change you, you could just be producing the same thing forever, and but it'll turn you into someone so unique and someone so unlike what you could have ever guessed, what anyone else could have ever guessed, and it's just because you believed in what you were doing, what we were talking about. So kind of to summarize, how has your creative life, your work, your pursuit of truth changed you?
I think that I've learned by being around a lot of different people that everyone has their story and their own truth. Yeah. And you have to be willing to listen, because everyone who walks in here, you need to give them an opportunity to share about themselves. And some people really need to talk, and they really, a homeless person can walk in. And I think that that's one thing my life has taught me, that everyone has a story, and sometimes you may be that only conversation they have all day, and so I try to give them that time, and to be sensitive to people. I just feel like I've been put in the right place in the right time. Yeah. I feel like so many times in my life, decisions I may have not really, I stuck to my truth, but at the same time, I also have wound up doing things and going places, and just that I felt like ultimately benefited me. The experiences I've had have been overwhelmingly positive. Yeah. And I feel like I've been able to connect to so many people in so many different levels and ways. And it's just been, I just feel like I wouldn't change anything. I just feel like I've become a better person. I think I've become a person that hopefully is giving back, just giving the information. Anyway, I feel like I'm almost an ambassador for the downtown here sometimes, because people come through here that way, and any visitors that come through, I just love the opportunity to talk to people about what's happening here and what's changing and how it's getting better, and encouraging people to move here. So yeah, I feel like I'm always been in the right place at the right time, and just blessed. I'm blessed, and so as long as I don't get too big of an ego, I'm going to be fine. That's all I can say. And it's nice, and I'm very grateful, by the way, for you to do this with me. I really am. It's a nice thing that feather in my cap. So it's all good.
Well, thank you for coming on to the podcast. I hope that we can even do more episodes in the future. And thank you for starting Culture Crawl, and for doing what you're doing here because that's what led me to doing this. So, it kind of worked in its own
I appreciate
cyclical
it.
sort of way.
Thank you,
So,
Caleb. I
yeah.
appreciate that. You're very welcome, and I'm glad that you're doing so well. You're really very unusual for your age. I admit that. You're very mature and thoughtful, and you have very intelligent way of speaking and questioning. I love it.
Thank
and
you.
I think at your age, that's fantastic.
I had good teachers in my life, and I had really good people raising me.
There's no doubt about it.
Those are the people I have to give the credit to.
Well, that's true, and you have listened to them, and that's good.
And that's a wrap on this week's episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I was so excited to get to talk to Mike. He's been a friend of mine for a couple years now. And like I said a couple times throughout the episode, it's his influence with the Culture Crawl in my area that originally inspired me to create this podcast. So I owe the creation of Suburban Tongue to him in a lot of ways. I want to leave you with some words that he said in the episode that I think are just extremely inspiring. Whatever you decide to do with your life, you better believe in it and have passion and feel like you're making a difference. Thank you, everyone, for listening. See you next week.